You good? Oh, wow.
All right.
All right. Hey, guys. It's me again. So, rather than read Scott's bio, I want to share his story in some of this discussion. But first, we deliberately selected startups tonight that were relevant, and I'm curious of your feedback. Ideally, constructively critical for each of them, because I bet these really resonate with you, and I bet you see a lot of these.
Yeah. Starting with the last one, where is he? Jonathan Levine? Here, yeah. Very cool. I mean, we did, it's funny, Chris Milk was the inspiration for our VR film 5 or 6 years ago. I had seen Clouds Over Sidra and changed all of our creative priorities, canceled everything the creative team was doing, got GoPro to donate a bunch of cameras, and then I got Chris to build me a rig that we took to Ethiopia months later. And we made our first VR film, I guess this is 4 years ago. And then because we were early, used that to raise millions and millions of dollars. So I think it's a great way to drive empathy among kids, among adults. I remember at first everybody thought we were crazy because it was just too early and those fancy Samsung cameras didn't work. And I think we paid $40,000 to have it stitched together in Korea, and it was so early on. And a donor walked into our office who had given $50,000, and I was just thanking him. And he'd given money for Ethiopia, and our VR film was an 8-minute film from Ethiopia. So I said, on your way out, you should just check out this thing. We just made it. It's a couple weeks, old. It's a rough cut. And then I leave the office, and apparently he watches it. 8 minutes later, takes the headset down, tears streaming down his eyes. He slams his wallet on the table, says, I haven't given enough, and he writes a $400,000 check, which was 10x the budget, or maybe 7x the budget, whatever, in one day. So we knew we were onto something.
Is this related to the story of how you actually got the VR headsets to drive additional, to create more emotional awareness?
Yeah, that's another story. So we wanted to, once we had the film, the big idea was to do the largest mass synchronous VR showing in the history of the world. So we were talking to Guinness, and we had 400 people coming to our gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the Temple of Dender, the Egyptian wing.
And just remind people what year this is. It was a technical challenge.
This is 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. So we have the film, we have the gala, we have our 400 people sold out coming in black tie. And then as we get, a month to go, I can't get the sets. Like I literally can't get 410 VR sets. So I was my team's like, you can't buy them. At the time, it was $600,000 because you need the $800 Samsung phone, the S6 or 7 or 8, and then the Gear VR, which was cheap. So I'm like, well, let's just buy them all. We'll have interns put them up on eBay. The vision will not be compromised. Anyway, my team is like, you can't spend $600,000. It's more than the budget of the gala. So anyway, I finally, through our network, I tracked down the Verizon CMO. And I take him out to, for drinks, and I'm like, look, here's the vision. Can you imagine being in the Temple of Dender, in the Egyptian wing of the Met, surrounded by African art, and after dinner, 400 volunteers come out with plexiglass trays of VR headsets. They strap them on you. We press play at the same time. All 400 people go to Ethiopia. They come back. Tears are streaming down their face, and then I just ask him for money in that moment. And he's like, okay, I'll give you 400 phones. So Verizon wound up giving us 400 phones, and we used that to shame Samsung. We're like, look, we got the $700 phones. Can you at least give us? So all in a week, like pallets of phones and Gear VR turn up at Charity Water, and we wind up pulling this thing off. And in that moment afterwards, we did ask people for money. I think we raised $2.5 million for 250 villages. So I'm a big believer in VR to drive empathy.
There's something that just happened.
It's been like 20 minutes.
That's all right.
Don't take me through all of it.
That's fine. I think we're good. That teased it up pretty well. But there was something that I thought came through tonight that was different from what just happened with how you told that story, which is, for me, and I think the startups were fantastic, and I hope they take this in a positive light. To me, they missed the salesmanship of it that clearly you have. And I wonder how many charities you see where they're missing a little bit of the entrepreneurial element, or someone who can tell and sell. Like, clearly you are driven on sales. You still know the numbers of how much money you raised that night. And I felt like tonight these were amazing causes. interesting companies, but missing a little bit of the hook. And I wonder how you feel like, how if that's helped you differentiate.
People ask a lot, like, what's been the key to raising all this money or all this awareness or getting all these people involved? And if we had to keep one thing, it would just be storytelling. I could lose the 100% model and raise $300 million. I could lose the brand and the design and the digital and still raise $300 million. It's literally the storytelling that is above all else.
And how much of that has to be you?
No, we have tons of people telling stories. There are like 5 people in the organization that are now out on stages telling their story. Well, how do we hire for it? So it's funny, I just saw an application today for an employee. And people send us video applications a lot. And the guy starts off looking at the camera, and he's working for a huge nonprofit out of Colorado Springs. And he said, I've worked here for through the grapevine, he'd worked there for 25 years. We're the only other nonprofit he's applied to in 25 years. And we hear this a lot. We got 1,800 applications for a receptionist. An entry-level position. So we get 400 people to applied for the last design position. So we have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to talent, which also is difficult sometimes just sifting through. So anyway, I just watched this 2 hours ago, so it's top of mind. He sits down and he looks at the camera and he says, hey, Charity Water, there's a bottle on my desk that's 15 years old. And he picks up the bottle and he said, this has been on my desk for 15 years ago. And he said, 15 years ago, I was on the border of Rwanda and DRC. I crossed into DRC. I was in a refugee camp that had been struck with cholera. And I poured a bottle of water down a woman's throat who was dying of cholera in front of me. And the humanitarians came to me and they said, stop. You cannot do this. You will cause a riot in this camp.
Wow.
You cannot share your water. And, they basically said, you need the water, all these reasons why, everybody's dying of cholera. And in fact, this is all in a video. So I'm sitting in my office today with our COO, another person. This is amazing. This guy has me. So he tells me a 5-minute story of, he sat with the woman, he watched her die. 50,000 people died of cholera in that incident, and he took the bottle of water back to back to Colorado, and it's been sitting on his desk ever since as a reminder of the need, the suffering of what. And then he's like, "I'd like to work at Cherry." Literally, he has an interview.
Wallet.
He has an interview tomorrow, though.
Wow.
He has an interview because that's our culture. Whether he's qualified or not but he's going to get the interview. So
do you happen to know how many people just statistically make it from the application to the interview process?
Probably 10.
Yeah.
We probably interview
10% or 10
No, 10 people.
Yeah. 10 total people. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we normally hire one of the 10.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
That's the plan. I had learned a lot about Scott and a lot about Charity Water in preparing for tonight, but I wonder how many people here knew about Charity Water before the New Jersey Tech Meetup announcement. Actually, it'll be easier to see how many people did not. Okay.
Great.
Which is not bad. Although, obviously, we want all of you to have heard of it. Maybe you could share a little bit just about the mission and some of the key metrics. There's some other things I want to get to, but I think it's really important that everyone really understands the mission behind what you're doing, how you donate, and how it's very differentiated from some of the other organizations out there.
So whoever talked second, who was that? Yeah. So you described it well. We're 663 million people living without water currently, living without clean water. So it's a tenth of the planet. 82% live in rural areas, and 18% live in urban and peri-urban areas. So you've got the kind of rural poor living on less than $1 a day or $1 to $2 a day, which is where we focused. And then you have cities and towns, people making $2, $3, $4. So I love the solution, by the way. If you can get that down from 20 cents for 20 liters, even to 15 or 10 cents, I think you could pick up some of our market, because they're paying 5 to 7 cents a liter. So our rural poor are still paying for clean water through maintenance programs 3, 5, 7 cents. So you're a little too expensive, but you could jump down, if you get to scale.
Year 5, year 7, we go down
more. Yeah. We think probably everybody in this room, everyone on Earth should have clean and safe drinking water. It's kind of the basic need for life. It's the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and if you thought about your life without clean water, everything would radically change. And we've been at it for about 12 years. trying to make that a reality for, again, really our market is about 550 million. So we're after the rural only. We let the governments and the World Bank and a lot of the big NGOs do cities and towns. That's where most of the funding is happening. And we work through local partners in 28 countries. We funded 14 technologies, anything from drilling wells to biosand filters to rainwater harvesting to spring protections, gravity-fed systems, $65 biosand filters at the low end, up to $290,000 huge solar systems for networks. And I think what's made the organization unique from a funding model, so we've only focused on individuals. 14 years ago when I started, I came across either a Harvard or a Stanford innovation review paper called How Nonprofits Get Big. And they looked at, I think it was about 1.5 million nonprofits in America. And now that includes, smaller ones, obviously, the kind of the local garden club and, some schools and such, but about 1.5 million nonprofits. And they looked at them over a 30-year period. And the researchers wanted to see who got big. So they benchmarked scale at $50 million a year in donations. Okay? Guess how many made it? How many got big?
Anyone?
200.
That's close. 144. So it was like 0.007% or whatever.
Wow.
So 144 got big. So less than 0.1%. And the hypothesis of the researchers going in was surely to get big, you had to diversify your funding. Okay? And they said, we know nonprofits take money from governments, from foundations, right? You're founded by Jonathan's Foundation, or, that's at least where the money comes from. Foundations, corporations. So that's kind of the check written by Jamie Dimon's office, Pfizer, right? And then individuals. So what they actually found was the exact opposite of their hypothesis. The ones that had gotten big had basically ditched all except one. And it was deep focus that led to the scale. So the government people were just so good at getting USAID, DFID, JICA, U.S. government money dries up, they talk to the Swedes, they talk to the Danes. They just understand how government money flows, how to get it. The foundation people learned how to work the Hiltons, the Rockefellers, the bureaucracy, the grants, the middle management. They just got really good at playing that game. The corporations, same thing, and then individuals. Individuals was a smaller percentage. What I missed at the time was that most of the individuals got big on subscribers, on monthly giving.
What percentage of your giving is recurring?
Well, we can talk about this later, but 2 years ago, 0.
Yeah.
We did $45 million of all one time.
Yeah.
And then January 1 in 2014, we did 45 million. January 1 started 0.
Yeah.
So now we pivoted at 10 years. We shut down the fundraising platform. We're basically not asking people anymore to fundraise for us, and it's all a call for subscribers.
Yeah. Which
has led to all the recent growth. But anyway, that led to us focusing on individuals. I never wanted to write a foundation grant. I wrote 1 in 12 years with Hilton. Took a year, 10 revisions of it.
Wow.
Probably 200 sunk hours. This was for $1 million. And the board met in a closed session and rejected our application with no explanation.
Time well spent.
I was like, never again.
Yeah.
We will never hire a grant writer in this organization. We will never apply. Because what a giant waste of time.
Absolutely.
And an individual can just sit with you and say, hey, do you want to get involved? And they say yes or no.
Yeah.
Yes, no, less, more, later. They can get an answer.
And what is your average? What's the average amount that subscribers pay now?
$29.80.
$29.80 a month. And what's the average lifetime that they'll?
Well, it's so new.
Yeah.
So
you don't know. So far, pretty good. You're staying on. It's not 3 months.
Right now, we keep moving the LTV out as they stay on.
That's great.
So it's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
But you weren't always such a philanthropic, generous person. And I want to get to one of the reasons I wanted to talk about Mike and Ann and about I think the culture of the entrepreneurial community, certainly that we represent here, is about finding passion and purpose, and usually paired with profit. So it's curious the path you took, but you were sort of living a completely different lifestyle before this. How would you sum up what you did prior to Charity Water?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of three acts of my life. The first part of my life was, growing up in a very conservative Christian home. My mom
In
was
New
an
Jersey,
invalid
by the way,
in New
right?
Jersey, yeah, out in Hunterdon County, actually South Jersey, and then Hunterdon County. So it was a gas leak in our house when I was 4. We almost all died of carbon monoxide poisoning. My dad and I bounced back. My mom never did. Was an invalid until she finally died, and I grew up in a caregiver role, good kid, didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't sleep around, like just, played piano in church. Then found this place at 18 years old and went freaking nuts for 10 years. Like became a club promoter, worked at 40 nightclubs, models, bottles, watches, Beamers, like just climbing up the social ladder, trying to sleep with everything that moved, trying to become the king of New York City nightlife. So then it was an overcompensation, I guess. And I
did pretty well at that.
yeah, I was good at it. I mean, I was at one point, my business partner and I were getting paid $4,000 a month by Bacardi to drink Bacardi publicly. $4,000 a month by Budweiser out in Long Island City to drink Budweiser publicly. And we're like, that's not enough. Your beer's terrible. Like it should be like 10 grand. But from we partied for a living. I worked at 40 different nightclubs. We were the guys, behind the one-way glass deciding who came in and Path to the Velvet Rope. It was really silly. But yeah, I mean, I was driving the BMW. I had the Rolex. I was dating girls on the cover of Fashion magazine. It was just all the things, all the markers of success that life tells you will make you happy. And maybe true to your experience, like one day you wake up and you have a stupid watch and a stupid car and a girlfriend that you don't love and the dog that you always wanted and the nice loft with 12 speakers. And you're like, I'm a miserable person. And my legacy is, I'm leaving the most meaningless legacy that a person could leave. I mean, I get people drunk for a living.
Yeah.
Like literally, that's all I do. My tombstone might actually read, "Here lies a man who's gotten millions of people wasted and gotten paid for it." So I did this.
Still may, but just with water.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm still selling liquid, right?
So did you have was it one day you woke up?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about this moment. At least I've seen this moment about on the beach one day, which is very an epiphany. But was it
was a
slow and
process.
steady, or was it like
it
one
was
day?
a process. It was a moment of, it was a vacation. It was like this vacation where we were at the top of our game and I had all these things. And I looked around in this compound in Punta del Este, Uruguay, and I remember spending $1,000 on fireworks. And my girlfriend was the hottest girlfriend in the whole compound, and we had a yacht and magnums of Dom Perignon champagne. Like it was the life that we'd always wanted. I'd worked 10 years to get this.
Yeah.
And not only wasn't I happy, I was able to see the unhappiness of others. And by the way, they were richer. Like the guys that I was with had the planes.
Yeah.
So the thing that I just realized there would never be enough. And it was like the game of musical chairs, and the music stopped, and I finally didn't have a place to sit and assessed. And I came, for me, it was a return back to a Christian faith, I think in a very different way, by means of service. And, maybe not the religiosity and the rules and the what we were against, but what we could be for. We could be for helping others, using our gifts to serve and to, what would a life look like with meaning? So I actually asked myself the question, what would the opposite of my life look like?
Yeah.
It would be much easier to make a radical 180 change than just, like I was so deep in the darkness that I couldn't just do less coke, look at less porn and like go to the strip club only once a month instead of once a week. Like I had to explore like what was in that corner of the room. And
come back to Jersey.
So I went to Liberia, which is a little farther.
You know what they say about Liberia.
So and I write about all this in the book, but a lot of stuff happened. There was a gun and club drama and a Ford Mustang that I rented at Newark Airport, cobalt blue Ford Mustang, and I drove up to Maine.
That sounds about right.
And I short story, as I applied to all the humanity, I thought the opposite of my life might be to live a life of service of 1 year. So there's this kind of Christian principle of tithing, where you give 10% of whatever you have back to the poor or back to church. So I'm like, well, I don't have any money because nightclub promoters do not save money. Like if we were making 300, we were spending 310. We were making 400, we were spending 440. Like, so I came to the end of this, and I'm like, well, I do have time, so I could tithe a year of the 10 that I'd selfishly wasted, and I applied to all these famous humanitarian organizations. As a pretty successful nightclub promoter in New York City, Red Cross, Oxfam, and yeah, so I guess I was surprised at the time, and no one else was. Like, no one will take me. You know, the Red Cross is like, hey, we're serious people. You know, we're running like the interior, mission to Darfur. Like, get out of here. You get people drunk.
Right.
So I was really frustrated because I had taken the first step, sold everything I owned, and was ready to have my pick of the humanitarian organizations. And finally, one organization says to me that if I'm willing to pay them $500 a month and go live in post-war Liberia, I could volunteer. I'm like, this is actually perfect. I mean, I'm going to go broke volunteering, and Liberia had just come off the UNDP chart. I think it was 147 of 147. It had just come out of a 14-year civil war. Charles Taylor had destroyed the country, and I was going to go in with a humanitarian medical mission to bring the best doctors and surgeons on their free time, on their vacation, to kind of pick up the pieces in a country with no electricity, no running water, no sewage. And I remember the time Liberia had one physician for every 50,000 Liberians. Wow. We have a physician for every 180 of us.
Yeah.
It's like one out of every 180 Americans is a doctor. 180 or two, maybe it's up to 200. 50,000. There were 2 surgeons in a country of 3 million people, and not a single facility to operate with electricity. So, that was a life-changing moment. Going from like, imagine me like in the DJ booth spraying Cristal over a club, right, at 3 a.m. to seeing 5,000 people with tumors, leprosy, blind, burned by rebels, who poured hot oil over their faces, trying to, disfigure them. And it was an amazing and difficult experience. So I spent a year there. And the cool thing is I was able to almost immediately redeem my nightlife list, because I still had 15,000 emails of pretty influential people who were partying, and open rates were like 100%.
Yeah. What year is this?
This is 2004.
Yeah.
So imagine you're on my email list. I've been getting you drunk for 10 years. The last time you heard from me was the Prada megastore opening in Soho. And like 2 months later, I'm like, here's a picture of a child with leprosy. People like, unsubscribe. So the list got a little smaller initially, but then it really started to grow as I was just telling these stories. I was sharing these photos of these amazing doctors who came from 40 countries, people who were getting their eyesight back because we were removing a cataract in a 20-minute surgery.
Yeah.
And they were able to see their child for the first time. And, I was just telling story after story. I was promoting.
Yeah.
Really, the same thing I'd done for 10 years, which was promoting 40 clubs and DJs and fashion parties. I was now promoting doctors, the idea of mercy and compassion and redemption and, courage and heroism of these people who had hung on, like in a country with no hope. And I think I saw that take. People started to give money. People started to volunteer. And then I learned about the water crisis there, really just seeing kids drink from swamps.
Yeah.
And started to explore the links between disease, some of the diseases we were actually seeing, and the lack of clean water. At the time, half of Liberia was drinking bad water.
Yeah.
So thousands of people would turn up to see our doctors in triage, but yet 1.5 million people were drinking from swamps and ponds and rivers. And
I want to pause you there for a second. Clearly, I don't need to be. Well, no, that's all right. I think the storytelling component. Usually, I need to be up here to draw this out, but I don't really need to be up here tonight. But that's all right. The entrepreneurial parallel there is that you started with this influencer network when you hit the ground running, and I wonder, do you think Charity Water would be successful today had you not put in the years, regardless of the friends you had, like building trust among an influential group of people who got you going? And 2, how would you do that differently today? These guys here who are trying to figure out, how do they get traction?
It's a great question. We've raised about $360 million. I would say those 15,000 people gave less than 100,000.
Yeah.
So that's not where our money came from. You know, I think that's where the encouragement came from. But if you really think of the kind of person who's going out spending $1,000 on Cristal, that's not my giver. I wish it was.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're out for the models and bottles, you're typically not out for the changing the world,
Yeah.
unselfish, radical generosity
Yeah.
path. So there have been a few exceptions, but I remember taking a guy once to Africa thinking that I could, you know, deeply change him, and he'd spent €1 million on champagne in St. Bart's in a single night. I'm like, that's 100 wells
Yeah.
in Ethiopia. And it was a great trip, but, you know, it wasn't...
How do you balance that, right? Like, how do you not turn yourself into being somewhat... I mean, you seem very optimistic. How do you not turn more cynical and see everything as measures of charity water well units and judging people who maybe aren't ponying up in a way that you would like them to? Or do you do that?
No, I don't. It's just... I don't know where that comes from. I think it's like it's a gift, because there are some people that are cynical and angry, and it's really bad for fundraising.
Yeah.
Nobody wants them around.
Keeping that in mind, by the way,
So-
remind people, like, this wasn't just the money started flowing in. How many no's do you think you've gotten over the time?
Oh, it was
Percentage-wise, or-
it was 80 or 90% no's for years.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't real. I'm sure, like any of you guys that are out there pitching for funding, you know, it's an idea. You can see it. You can, like, when I started, I was like, we're gonna give everyone clean water. And we're going to be a part of this, leading this movement where every single person on earth has clean water. So I could kind of see 30, 40, 50, 60 years into the future where we drop the mic and the collective movement says, we did that, like we did polio.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was living on a closet floor in Soho with a laptop, and I was just making 10, 15 presentations a day saying, here's the problem, here's the solution, here's my idea for this. The idea was ridiculous, too. My idea was that we would create a charity with no Jonathan Soros, with no backers, with no funding, where we would promise from day one that 100% of all public donations would go directly and only to build water projects.
How do you make that work? Just to be clear.
Today it's very sophisticated, but
I want to be
back
really
then-
clear. That means not only 100% of the donations, you even raise money against the credit card fees against the
Yeah,
donation.
so I opened up 2 bank accounts, and I had no idea what this would look like.
Yeah.
So for any of you guys that have actually no idea, like, of the how, like, the vision was, so here was the idea. So water would be the mission. There's a big difference for me between mission and vision. Vision is like this, you know, your North Star. Like, our vision is to reinvent charity. It's to reimagine philanthropy. It's to create, it's all this soft stuff. It's to create a movement of generosity among people who aren't giving, who aren't compassionate, and kind of win them back. The mission is clean water. But I actually believe this. We have a couple million supporters. If we said, we're done with water, and we're now charity : your basic need, health, shelter, maybe even education, I don't think they'd leave.
Yeah.
Maybe 2%. Like, they're actually not signed up for the mission. They believe water is a really good thing. We've taught them. But none of our donors come to us because they're looking to solve the water crisis. It's not a felt need in America. America has officially 100% water coverage. Like Flint, Michigan, you know, nobody died. 4,500 kids are dying every day around the world about water.
9 people died.
9 people died. Directly of the water? Okay, 9 people died. Well, from when? From Legionella. Okay, 9 people died. The last I heard was, last I heard, 9 people died. 4,500 people will die today. So imagine 9 seats in business class on your next jumbo jet. Imagine 10 jets today. So Flint's been talked about for 3 years, 9 casualties. Okay, 4,500 today, 4,500 tomorrow, 4,500 the next day. You know, the people where we work, and you've been to these areas, they would walk miles to drink out of a Flint toilet. Like, they're watching their kids die of diarrhea in their arms. So Flint has actually helped us because it's made Americans think for the first time, like, oh wow, maybe everybody in the world doesn't, maybe clean water isn't something that's just taken for granted. But no one is coming to us because that is a felt need for them.
What do you think
they're
you're
coming to
selling
us
at the end
because
of the
we
day?
are telling them a story
Yeah.
that, hey, 1/10 of the planet, because of where they're born, was born without the thing that you have taken for granted every single day. And then we tell stories of what it means to walk 8 hours a day for bad water, or what it means to lose your child, or what it means to die of cholera within 48 hours, or what it means to be raped, as you're a 13-year-old, you're a 13-year-old and you're heading out into the jungle in Liberia. What it means to be attacked by hyenas and disfigured because you're sharing the same water source with the hyenas. What it means to have your best friend right next to you at the Tana River in Kenya, snatched by a crocodile, and hear her scream as you watched her dragged into the murky water and then never seen again. So there are hundreds and hundreds of these stories. I mean, I've been to 69 countries now. I've been to Ethiopia 30 separate times. Like, all these things are, I could spend 20 minutes just telling you the horrors of not. So we have done this over 12 years, telling stories of what it means not to have it, and then telling stories of the power of clean water, the power of transformation, when clean and safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene can be brought into a family, a community in a sustainable way. So that has allowed us to build the movement. But the mission is water. The mission could change. The vision is the other stuff. So the vision was to take cynical people about, and I came across a USA Today poll, again, early on, that this is 12 years ago. 42% of Americans say they don't trust charities. Okay, just take that in for a second. Almost half of the people in the country polled about charities writ large said we don't trust them. NYU did a more recent study, NYU Stern, polled Americans on charitable trust and loyalty. 70% of people said they believe charities either wasted their money or badly wasted their money. 30% of people thought charities did the right thing with money.
Wow.
So that was like the huge that was the problem I wanted to solve. It was even bigger. It trumped the water problem. Oh my gosh, we have all these people that could be giving. They could be a force for good. They could be. You had untapped resources. You had latent money sitting in bank accounts because people were cynical and they didn't trust whatever charity. And this was. You guys remember, like, Anderson Cooper used to do these specials where he'd chase down the bad charity CEO and be on the stairs of the McMansion and the guy slams the door. And apparently 42% of America throws up their hands and said, that's why I don't give.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the money in my pocket.
How much has that affected? Do you find 40-ish% of the people you talk to, you run up against that hurdle?
So many people tell us that we are the first charitable gift they've made in their life.
Wow.
First charity I've ever given to.
What's your youngest donor?
Oh, like 3.
Yeah.
We have 3, 4, 5-year-olds sending in letters. And at our opening party, I think this is on the record. What is now? We had 700 people come to our opening party in a nightclub 13 years ago, and I just asked everyone to give $20 on the way in, promising that 100% would go. And I remember a marijuana dealer came in, which I guess it's okay now. Back then it was a little shadier. And he dropped $500 in the bin. And he said, this is the first donation I've ever given to a charity in my life, but I know where all this money is going to go.
Wow.
And we're like, this is the thing.
How did
we
you
can
establish
win
that
back
level
trust.
of trust?
Well,
Like,
the 100%
did you know that guy?
was a big deal. Yeah, I did know him, but he didn't trust me.
Yeah.
It was the idea.
The commitment of it's all in.
It's all in. And so in the second bank account, the idea was we would go and look for funders, visionary, philanthropists, business people, entrepreneurs who we would package overhead and make that sexy.
Yeah.
We would make it cool to pay for the salaries, cool to pay for the office, cool to pay for the Epson copier and the toner package.
Yeah.
Because that was a cost of business. But the public, the 2 million donors have never paid for that. And then just from a branding perspective, I said, well, if I'm going to promise 100%, we have to do this in such an extreme nature. From day one, let's make this promise to pay back credit card fees. So, even today, if you go on our website and you donate $100 in your Amex, I think I've got them down to 3%. So I get $97.
Yeah.
You would not expect me to send more than $97 to the field to build a project.
Correct.
But we pay back the $3. Our overhead donors give that money to Amex, make your donation whole, send the 100 out, and then track it.
I've got to think
So
you've
that's
tried to
always been
convince
100%.
the
I have.
they won't do it.
If you do it for us, we do it for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm like, do it for everybody. It's great marketing.
Yeah. Right.
Somebody should be the official card of giving.
Yeah.
100% goes. Every charity in America would make it the default drop down.
Yeah.
I pitched it to,
Yeah.
I got like campaigns. what's more priceless, right? Giving to a charity, knowing that 100% will go, priceless.
How do you think you guys
should
have
have
emerged as like the tech sweetheart of charities?
We were just early on social media, so I invited myself to speak at Twitter headquarters when there were 28 employees.
How'd you do that?
Biz, Jack, Evan, just
Did you know him? You email him blind?
I did a lot of cold emailing.
Yeah.
I emailed Zuck blind.
How many responses? I'm a huge believer in the cold email. 1 out of
20. Back then, whois.net was great. You could scrape anybody's name off the domain registry.
Yeah.
Right? It'd be like, I don't know, the MySpace guy, right? Tom, it'd be like, Tom192 at myspace.com. Right. Like, that's Tom's email, before it all got masked. So, I think we were early on. I was early on just using email to promote nightclubs. And so we had built the email list. I realized the power of email. Then I just realized that social media was going to be very powerful for us to not only get people to raise awareness about this issue, but take their money in an efficient way and then track it. So we just built this culture of early adoption. We were the first charity to set up an Instagram account for a charity and a brand. We're the first charity to get 1 million Twitter followers. And by the way, we have charity water accounts on all the social networks that didn't make it, right? We have like 17 out there where, we had 412 followers and then Polaroid went down or whatever.
Yeah.
So we just built a culture. We want to be there early. That's why VR was so important for us to be there early. Whether it saw mass adoption, it was the innovation. So I think we thought like many of the tech founders, many of the tech companies, we A/B tested early on.
Do you consider yourself a tech company?
Yeah, oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Not like a tech, influenced by technology, like you.
No, like a tech company.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably have 7 A/B tests running on the website right now in Mixpanel. And if you walk into the headquarters, there are at least 9 TVs with Looker Gecko board dashboards.
Yeah. Donated
KPIs.
TVs, right?
Donated TVs, exactly. Yeah. Samsung gave us $50,000 TVs. So anyway, the 100% was going to be really powerful of bringing people back. Then we just stumbled into this. If you bifurcate, if you separate out your overhead money from your public donations, and you have whole dollars coming in, you can write really cool algorithms and programs tracking those dollars.
Yeah.
Right? Most charities put all their money into a big pot. They pay their people first, payroll, and then they do their programs. So in a really lean year, it's the programs that take a hit, right? Typically not them laying off half their workforce. We never had that option. We just had these 2 bank accounts. So we had to fight separately for whoever we would be able to hire, but then the public money was never touched. In fact, it was paid back with the credit card fees. So we built something like 7 years ago called Dollars to Projects, where we could promise a 4-year-old kid who gave up her allowance and sent us 82 cents, right? Her parents made an 82-cent donation on their Visa. We could track the 82 cents to a well in Malawi, because it was a whole 82 cents. So we could say that was shared with, Penny's $11.62 and my $142 and, your $5.42 and here are all the people that made up this $11,629 well in Malawi.
Yeah.
And the well next to it actually cost $9,622. So we were just really early on in that. I think the fundraising, we were the first people to really do the donate your birthday thing. I sold that idea to Facebook 11 years ago at the Gramercy.
I was literally sold, or just?
I was, well, the sold is I was with one of the founders. I'm like, look, I have an idea for Facebook. Get every single person, instead of writing on this stupid wall, to donate their birthday for a cause they care about. And, I remember writing down a bunch of language on the napkin. The founder sent $50,000 in the next day. Thanks for the idea.
Yeah.
Tried to hire me to run the whole division, which at the time just wasn't interesting and still wouldn't be. And it took them about 10 years to implement. And now I think they're doing $1 billion.
Wow.
In birthdays.
Wow.
They did over $2 billion last year in fundraising.
How many people have
campaigns.
ever donated their birthday?
To any charity.
15%.
Okay, well, it's a great idea. I've done 9 birthdays now. It's great. Your friends and family don't want to get you a tie or a wallet or a handbag or a gift card to iTunes. And it's a great way to build community and share causes that you love and your passions and involve people in it. So what we were early with that idea. We raised $60 million with that idea and fundraising campaigns through about 600,000 donors. So the beauty was that so simple math, 6,000 only 60,000 campaigners, so it's actually a tiny number, raised $60 million, $1,000 on average, from 600,000 of their friends. So you had these mini little word of mouth movements, these hub and spokes. Aaron gives up his birthday, and I've just met Aaron, but you're going to go, if you're average, get at least 10 donors. They've never heard of Charity Water before, right? I just needed to inspire you. So our big idea early on was that we could get that viral, and we really thought we could. We were exploring K-Factor, we were exploring, one out of every 13 campaigns was spawning a new one. And we couldn't. We tried everything. The idea is really, really good, but it's hard for you to pass the inspiration of the charity down to your friends. And it was actually the idea that was better than Charity Water. So if you give up your birthday for Charity Water, you're going to raise $1,000, maybe 10,000. Okay. If you give up your birthday for your daughter's amazing local project at her school, you're going to raise $10,000 because people are in a relationship with you. They care about you, and they want to support and show you support it, unless it's a cause that offends them.
Yeah.
So what we saw was people would do a birthday for Charity Water, and then their next birthday for Pencils of Promise, and their next birthday. So I knew the game was up about 5 years in when Heifer.org, right? Heifer sells gift catalogs, goats and sheep in gift catalogs. $100 million organization. They ask me to donate my birthday to Heifer. I'm like, I invented that. Like, stay in your lane. Like, catalogs are like, that's your thing. So it was a wonderful thing to realize that this idea, that we were just a small part of kind of launching this. And we had done it with so many influencers. Will Smith gave up his birthday. Jada Smith. Like, we had tons of people in Hollywood. We had tons of people in tech. Jack Dorsey did 3 birthdays. Johnny everybody. We just Reid Hoffman. We just made this a thing where people were donating their birthdays that then started to take on, and now it's amazing that it's raising so much money for great causes.
For people in here who are, I think there might be this perception that Scott knows everybody. He was at these hot clubs and he grew this network, and now he's they raised $300 million, and of course
no crossover.
Regardless, has this network of people, whether it was pre or post that life's part of your life. And I think there's a lot of people here who might be thinking I don't know how the hell I'm going to get Jack Dorsey to donate something for me or do anything for me or even respond to an email. And I want to talk a little bit about do you think there's a level of absolute determination required to surmount some of these obstacles, to break down some of those doors? I'm wondering, have you sent any cold emails this week?
I still do, but it's a little different now. Because there's a website, there's a book, there's a I don't know.
Do you think that you're saying that the level of hustle that you've needed is decreased?
No, now I would get to someone differently. I'm not going to cold email.
Sure, now you probably
Warren
know.
Buffett.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask 5 people I'm in Omaha. Can you make an intro to Warren? 5 people would be able to do that. I'm not going to cold email Warren.
Yeah.
At the moment, so the methods have changed. But we're 12 years in, and we raised $70 million last year. So it's just a different game than, year one, we raised $700,000. So I think at the beginning, it was just
for how long do you think that level of
years?
You're 14 years in?
Yeah, no, 12.
12 years in? So
7, 8. It's still not easy. Honestly, there hasn't been a tipping point yet. It just feels like we're pushing this boulder up a hill, and the boulder just gets bigger. Right? The more money you raise, the more money you have to raise. And for us, the more mouths we have to feed on the other side.
Yeah.
So all the money that we're raising from the public, we can't touch. So we're effectively running 2 businesses that are incredibly difficult. They have to run in perfect balance and equilibrium at the same time. So from a business model approach, I tell people not to adopt the 100% model. It was right for us. But think about it, existentially, and not so existentially when the Dow tanks and we could go bankrupt with $100 million in the bank, right? We could raise $100 million this year for clean water projects and miss payroll because I can't touch any of the $100 million. And actually, the more money we raise for water projects, the more people I have to hire on the other side to be a good steward of that, to deploy it, to build out the water programs, to audit it, to monitor the sustainability, all that. So,
do you know the percentage for every $100 million you raise, you need X million to operate?
We run at about 85-15. So about 85% programs, 15%. So we're very efficient. We've always had the top ratings from every watchdog group that's ever looked at us. but as efficiency aside, like that's actually not our challenge. We could be 70-30. It doesn't really matter to the 2 million public donors.
You
It
gotta get that
matters
money.
to our families. Like if they were happy for us to spend 50% of our money on marketing, technically we could,
Yeah.
because it's not your money, right?
Yeah.
You're getting a pure play straight through.
Yeah.
So we haven't. We've still been very, very efficient, despite of that, just as a value of the organization. But it's incredibly difficult. So I think, yeah, it was a lot of hustle at the beginning. It was just a lot of, it was the 80, 90, 100-hour weeks. It was, you work till the office, Saturday, 1 o'clock, you go home, you come back 8 or 9 a.m. on the Sunday.
Yeah.
And there's no life because you don't even think it's going to exist. Now I work like 45, 50 hours a week. I have 2 kids, and there's other people who are working a lot harder. And I mean, my pace has completely changed now. 12 years in, and I have a 2-year-old, I have a 4-year-old. I'm on the road a lot, so this is rare
Yeah.
for me to do this. I mean, I'm typically taking my kids to school 5 days a week, turn up at the office at 9, 10, and then I'm home for 5:30
Yeah.
to have dinner, give them a bath, and read. Now, when I'm on the road, I'm making 10 speeches in 4 days in Singapore in 2 weeks. So when I'm on the road, I'm working, as hard as I can, straight through. But it's kind of a pacing thing. In the beginning, it was just, there was nothing else. There was no like Netflix and chill. You're not going to the movies. You're just working night and day just to try to bring your vision to life.
Yeah.
And enough people, it's a numbers game. Like enough people said yes. And you latch onto that yes, and then 9 no's, and then there's another yes.
Yeah.
And then as you build it, as it becomes a little more credible, more and more people say yes, and they start introducing their friends.
I'm wondering what your relationship is like with your dad now.
That's complicated. My mom just died of pancreatic cancer a couple months ago, so I'm trying to take care of him. He's in a terrible spot.
Does
just
your
shy of
life
their-
with purpose motivate
Oh, I mean, they're
you?
super. Sorry, my parents were super
I
happy.
didn't
see
mean
this.
to pride that level.
No, that's
but I
fine.
appreciate
I'll
that.
talk about anything.
Yeah.
They were really, really happy. They were a part of the 10-year journey. My mom got a little better from her illness. If you read the book, it was such a bizarre illness, but she would feel better, and she would volunteer at Charity Water. Last year, not this year, the year before, they came to the gala, which is like my mom had never seen anything like this. So they were along for the ride. I was an only child, so for them to see their prodigal scoundrel rogue, get married and have kids and like be on CNN and be talked about by the president of the United States about generosity and compassion. This was amazing for my parents. So she got to actually read the book, the manuscript right before she died, and it's dedicated to her and my dad and my kids. But he's just now he's coming up every few. We're just trying to take care of him. They were incredibly in love. They were married almost 50 years. So they really wanted to make the 50th wedding anniversary, and she wanted to see the book published and hit the New York Times list, and she died right before all that. So it's been tough for him, but we have a great relationship. It's just
How's having kids changed your view? I mean, you were obviously massively inspired for purpose. For me, my kids are here tonight. Unfortunately, couldn't hold their attention long enough, but.
It's all right. It's hard to compete with those devices.
And they get very little screen time, so they're in massive heaven and not thinking about Charity Water. Sorry. So, for me, that was a big moment of purpose and sort of I have a similar schedule, trying to be around when possible. And I wonder how you already were driven by something with significant purpose affecting millions of lives. And I wonder how having your own family changed, if it changed your view at all or reinforced the same things you were working towards.
I think, over time, listening to parents who've lost children, until you're a parent and you feel that love for a child.
The whole time is build an efficient model as if it were for profit in a smart way, in this case driven by technology, and be transparent about how you spend people's time and money. It's not that complicated.
Sounds so simple.
Yeah. Turns out, not so easy. I really have 1,000 more questions, but I will let us wrap up here. So first, can we give Scott an enormous round of applause? If you can hang out for a minute, I just got some closing remarks. So